All right, Proffitt podcast listeners, we have a special guest on the show today. Welcome, Sara. How are you?
I'm so happy to be here. Thanks, Crystal.
Yes, it's going to be so much fun. We were chatting right before we started recording that Sarah's in Chicago where it is like it's snowing as we're speaking. And I'm like, it's trying to snow here in Texas. And I'm like, go away. Like we don't want any of this. So
I've signed up for it being from Chicago. That's not fair. No, not in Texas.
no, we can't handle, we like, as like Texans, we think that we're like all big and strong. We can handle this. And then you put just a little bit of snow on the ground and we're like, we can't deal with life at all. So that's really truly how we're built.
Totally.
But Sara, we are here today to talk about books, book writing, book marketing, and I am so excited about this topic. But before we dive in, can you tell us a little bit about your journey? How did you get into book writing, book selling, and doing all the things you're doing today?
Absolutely. So I really did. I was a kid that loved to read and I liked to write. My grandmother bought me like a blank book, like a journal when I was quite young, and I would like write really bad poetry and draw bad pictures, but I loved journaling, so it was always definitely an interest. And then because I read lots of books and watched movies, learned that the way you knew you were going to be a writer was that a teacher would take you aside and tell you were special and sort of, knight you in some way. And that's how you knew. And when that didn't happen, I said, oh, I didn't understand any of this consciously, but really what happened is I said, oh, I guess I'm not allowed. I'm not good enough. So I mean, it's wild to look back and think as young people, we could do that to ourselves, right? I just said, oh, I guess that's not for me. I'm not allowed to do that. And then I went to college and read other people's books, became an English major and got a job in advertising because that was sort of adjacent to the creative stuff I wanted to do. And unfortunately, I entered that advertising agency at the height of the Me Too era. Not that this is new news, but it was really, unfortunately, a super abusive, toxic environment, not just for me, but for many women that work there. And so I really entered a crisis. I was 23, supporting myself, 22, 23. I wasn't asking to go back and have support from my family, but I certainly felt very trapped. It was this is what I am going to do to pay for rent and buy food. And I didn't know what to do. And I really spiraled into a pretty severe mental and physical health crisis at that point. And one day I was flying back from Boston to Chicago where I had taken this job, and they were calling my flight, and I found a book in the airport bookstore. And again, books were the escape, solace, comfort. I didn't have time to read anything. I just randomly grabbed this book called Holy Hunger by Margaret Bullitt Jonas. And no one I've heard of, anyone's heard of, it's just this book. And I got on the plane and I read the whole book in one sitting. And by the time I finished, I just knew I was leaving the job. I said, I might, if I end up on the street, it is going to be better than if I keep going to this job, it's going to kill me. I just knew it was that bad. Right. And so her story wasn't about working in an advertising agency and, sexual trauma. It was about a woman who had gotten into a really serious mental and physical health crisis like mine, with food and eating disorders and all of that, and what she did to get better. And that was this incredible turning point. I truly credit that book as saving my life, not just metaphorically, literally.
Yeah.
And I was able to leave. It was terrifying because I was I still don't know how I'm going to support, but there's all that stuff going on. But I was able to start a new life. And I remember it also taught me that that's the power of someone's story. Whether we share that on a podcast, whether they share that on a stage, whether we share it on a YouTube video, whether we share it in a book, she wasn't Brene Brown or Mel Robbins, someone who we know their name. It's a woman sat down and shared, this is what I've been through and here's what could work for you. And I didn't die because of it. And so I made a vow at that moment. I just said, I don't know what's going to happen. I probably won't be successful at this, but I am going to pay that gift forward. I'm going to write books that could potentially help someone if there's any way. If I get out the other side of this alive, I'm going to pay that forward. And that led to a first book. And I was very blessed to get on Oprah and the New York Times, all this amazing things. And then I said, I'm devoting the rest of my life to helping other people that have this calling. You have a story, those of you listening, if you have a story in you, a methodology, a way that you see things, something that more people need to know about than probably currently know about you. And I just thought that's what I'm doing the rest of my life. And I have never looked back. And it's been the greatest gift ever to get to do this work.
Yeah, and I think it's so beautiful too when it comes to writing because it's a gift that I believe that you give yourself and like whether it's purging thoughts and emotions or sharing your story, but you're also giving that gift to your audience in a really beautiful special way. But I want to go back to, you have this desire, you have this dream and you're like, "Okay, I'm doing this." It's kind of like we have those like really proud moments where like, I'm so happy that I took this path in my journey. I zigged this way instead of zagging that way. But I want to circle back to that moment where you're sitting down to write. You're like, okay, I'm going to write. But did you have that thought creep back in of that little girl who was like,
Oh,
I don't think I'm the teacher's pick for this? Like, walk us through
every
that.
single day, every
Yeah.
single day. And you know what? Most of the people that I have the gift of coaching, because none of the people we coach they're not writers, right? Like the people in our Thought Leader Academy, people I've gotten to have the gift of supporting, they are called to a mission, right? In some
Yeah.
way to touch lives, change lives. And then it's like a book is a vehicle, like a podcast is a vehicle, like these other things are. And it's like I call it teacher trauma. Like some people have teacher trauma and it's like a teacher, or we had one of my clients, my first clients, her father at 3 years old, when she made him a birthday card, got out a red pen and circled all her grammatical mistakes on it. Like it makes me cry actually, because she was so convinced for the rest of her life that she couldn't write because this memory, right? And sometimes it's like mine, which was an omission. It wasn't like someone said, you're garbage. It's just they didn't say you're special. And that's what I saw in all the stories is like you're supposed to get told by an authority figure that you're special and be given permission to do this thing. And so every day I sat down, I call them the gremlins, were screaming, you're terrible, you have no talent. It was monstrous, and it is for so many, which is why all of our coaching is mindset based. We use neuroscience literally to dissolve those limiting traumatic beliefs, because that's what it takes. That's what's in the way of so many of us, whatever our gift is, our big magic, that we're bringing in. And so I slogged through, I don't know what really kept me going except that book that did that for me. I kept thinking, well, what if she gave into that voice? What if Elizabeth Gilbert just didn't write Eat, Pray, Love? You could all insert a favorite book, right? And I've met some of these incredibly well-known authors now, and not one of them, not Maya Angelou, not Brene Brown, like not one of these people has said they totally believed in themselves and other people believed in them and they had total confidence. It doesn't happen even for true genius. People that we've established in the world are like geniuses, right? And so the only thing I can say, if anyone's listening, is that and has this feeling, it's not you. It's not personal. This is the inner critic. We can call it the saboteur, Carl Jung, the inner critic. Stephen Pressfield has a great book called instead of The Art of War, it's called The War of Art. And the whole book is basically about the minute you say yes to bringing something really real from your soul, like you're going to get hit with it. Like it's coming for you to tell you can't, you're too old, you're too young, you didn't get good grades, you didn't go to college, like whatever nonsense. And none of it's true, but we believe it. And so I learned so many it took me on the personal growth path. That's what's funny about writing a book or anything, right? Creative endeavor. It's who you're going to become, and I, thank God, found personal growth books and mindset books and neuroscience books and really rewired my whole brain.
Yeah. This is incredible. Well, you name dropped Elizabeth Gilbert and you said the words big magic. So I'm hoping that you have read the book Big Magic. That is the audiobook I have listened to probably 7 or 8 times, and I go back to it over and over again if I get into this like creative block.
Yes.
So yes.
Love it. Love her. And I think the reason that book resonates with so many of us is because she does, like Stephen Pressfield in the War of Art, she acknowledges that like fear is going to come and try to kick your butt and talk you out of it. 200 million people in America right now say that they have a book in them. Like they kind of go, oh, whether it's a family story, a memoir, a leadership book, a business, and even though there's lots of books, like a fraction of people are going to actually do that. And it's mostly not because they're not talented, capable, worthy, have something important to share, because those are the things we tell ourselves, the lies. It's because we believe the lies. It's not actually, no, everything can be learned, growth mindset. We know, it's like writing is a skill that can be learned.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's not, I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying, no, I'm starting book number 7 this week. Okay. So, it's very exciting. It's like the new project, and it definitely gets easier. If you're listening, the first one, you're going to have more of that junk because you haven't gone through to go, yeah, well, you can say that, but I'm holding my book here, and I did it, but it's still, there's that inner battle.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I mean, you're speaking to me like you're speaking to me personally, but you're really speaking to this audience because I think that where a lot of people see themselves is they know they have that message. Like if they're listening to the show, they have shown up and they're like, I know I have it. I know it's there. I'm trying to figure out the medium to pull it out of me. A lot of them have already chosen podcasting. We have a lot of
Yeah.
seasoned podcasters in our audience, and they're like, okay, well, I'm here, Sarah. Like I'm already showing up in maybe a podcast, maybe a YouTube format, like whatever that is. But a book, come on, do I really need a book? Because then what happens, I feel like with creators today is they get in the comparison trap of, yeah, I'll do that when I have 1 million followers, or
Yeah.
I'll wait until I have, 50,000 Instagram followers. And then maybe, but I'm not there yet. I'm not big enough. So I'd love for you to speak to that person that's really struggling with that today.
I'm so happy you presence this, because at least for me, every time there's a new vision, a new vista, a new level, this same thing. And so I actually just did a piece of content around whatever you're telling yourself you're not big enough for is actually your 2025 vision. Like just what if, because, and the reason I say that is because I do this. I watched myself as it's January, making my goals for the year. And I would go, oh, I'm not big enough. I'm not, a big enough name or brand to, launch this YouTube channel or whatever it was, like these different things over the last few years. So I love that you've present, because it's another one of those seductive lies of resistance. I want to share, people ask me all the time, and I've done YouTube videos on, do you do a book first or a podcast first? A book first or a TEDx talk first? A book or a business? And it's like a chicken egg conversation, that comes up, and it's a good conversation to have. And what I can say is, the order is not super, like if you want to go big on a podcast, then you've got a built-in audience for a book, right? And that's awesome because, otherwise, you want to be able to have some people to share this book with, right? And you can also use a book to open doors for getting bigger guests on a podcast or growing an audience on a podcast. So here's how I like to think about it. Notice right now, it's when we're recording this, right? It's early in the new year of 2025. And this month, Martha Beck, who's like Oprah's, life coach from Oprah Magazine, Mel Robbins, many of us, probably have heard of Mel Robbins, and Gabby Bernstein, big, all of them, New York Times bestselling authors multiple times over. They all launched books this month. And Eckhart Tolle did a relaunch with Oprah of one of his books. Okay, so it's like none of these people need more visibility. None of these, but they use the book. I think of the book as a flag in the ground. And the stats are that the average adult right now, the attention span is 2.9 seconds. That's what we've done because of being on these all day, right? That's what we've done to ourselves and our brains. And then people say, why are you going to write a book? You can't read a book in 2.9 seconds or listen to an hour-long podcast in 2.9 seconds. But here's the cool thing. I was like, why are all these big name people, like the minute they get their next big idea, they run and write the book. Like that's like they immediately go, and new people do the same, right? So why? And it's because, and I did get research because I am a data girl and I like facts and stats. The brain can process in 1.8 seconds your book cover, your name, and that you're an expert in that topic. It's like a level of credibility, and immediate authority, whether that should be true or not. Because I mean, you could write a crappy book, and whatever, anybody could, I guess. But not the way we'll help you do it here with Crystal and I will have you do that. But so what happens is, whether you have a podcast first or don't, or you have a TEDx talk first or you don't, whenever someone does the book, what happens is first you immediately, whether you're an unknown emerging thought leader, creator, or you're a celebrity, immediately anyone that sees that book in 1.8 seconds, so under the attention span barrier, I think of it like when people are trying to break the speed of light, with aviation, right? It's the
Yeah.
attention span barrier we got to break. So in 1.8, and this is research based, like someone will know who you are, what you're about, you're the expert, and they will start to trust you. And we're in a trust recession. And they will start to see you as like the go-to thought leader on that thing. So even these people that are super famous, they want to write the next book on their new Let Them,
Yes.
like Mel Robbins, right? And so it's so cool because it works in both directions. If you're really well known, it gives you a reason to go on all the podcasts again, the TV shows, and do all your thing. And if you're emerging and you aren't known yet, it's such a phenomenal way you're going to cut the trust recession stuff, because someone's like, well, you had to sit down and put all those ideas somewhere and they can safely try you out, and
Yes.
so for people to say, oh, I'm not big enough, like I did the book first, where I had
Yeah.
no audience. 90% of people that we work with have no social media, no email list, have maybe like one person's listening to their podcast. Like, I mean, I'm not kidding. It's like, and then the book is the door opener, because
Yes.
people love to have guests on the show with a new book. They have in the media and podcasting, and conferences, keynotes. A lot of our clients want to get paid to speak. They want to monetize their podcast. So like the book is that vehicle for all those, we call them the doors, like the 7 doors. And so that's a long-winded answer, but I love the question because it will either get you there faster. And if you're already big, then of course that's why people keep doing it. But like you don't need to know anyone. Like no one knew who I was writing that book.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you hit on so many incredible points. I mean, first, I love that you brought up all these prolific writers that are continuously putting things out, because people are saying like, well, who's reading books these days and who's doing this? And I'm like, I'm reading books. I'm buying books. Like I even forgot I pre-ordered a book the other day. I got this package on Amazon and my husband was like, what'd you order? And I was like, I don't know, what is it? And then I opened it and I was like, oh, it's a book that I ordered like a few months ago. Cause I'm a pre-order gal. Like I'm that loyal person. That's like, you tell me about your book, I'm going to support you in this big way and pre-order your book. Like pre-orders are life for all you authors out there, if you didn't know this. But the thing that I love about speaking about people in this way is like, you don't have to put all of these writers on a pedestal. Like it is absolutely achievable. I've self-published 2 books on Amazon, and there is something weird about it. Like I show up on podcasts and I do these, I speak on stages and I do this, but the book is still what impresses so many people. And it's so strange to me. Like it's great, but it's also like, really? Like this is the thing, this $20 thing. Cause it's not like it's $2,000 to sit down with me and do one-on-one coaching. It's not this. It's this $20 packaged all of my ideas, and it's all laid out in this beautiful way. So I totally agree with what you're saying. Like there's something magical about a book. And I think it's just really cool.
We have a client launching next week. And so, she's been in pre-order and, getting on the bestseller list and all that stuff. And she messaged me today and she said, she's like, Sarah, because I'm in your community and coaching where there's like, we're all writing books. And she's like, I start to kind of feel like, okay, everyone has a book. And she's like, people are losing their mind. They're like, oh my God, like all these people, like
Yes.
of hers, and they're like so impressed. And she's like, I am so proud of this and so excited. And it's her first one and all that. But she was also still like, but I mean, in her world, she's like, I know like a whole bunch of people writing books right now. But she's like, what people don't, it is, and it is, you had to sit there, Crystal, I'm sure it wasn't easy to make the time and make the commitment.
Oh no.
And it's a big, and Mel Robbins I listened to her and she's like, I'm not doing a book this year. She's like, I'm so glad I did it. And I'm not doing another one this year. She's like, I'm having to because it's a big deal, but my gosh, is it worth it? Right. On the other side, you get people's reaction like, okay, thank you.
Yes. And I cannot wait for her book to come, like the Let Them, like it's one of those books. Like I listened to her, she was on Amy Porterfield's podcast recently. So we'll make sure we'll link to that because it was such a special interview. It was right after she had talked to Oprah and Oprah's team and everything. And it was just so cool to see the behind the scenes of her having a dream fulfilled because of a book. Like that's the thing that I see. It's like, whoa, she never would have had this opportunity to sit down and have an interview and be on Oprah's podcast if it were not for this book. So I think it's one of those things that people, again, we're beating ourselves up about saying we're not enough, we're not smart enough, we don't have enough experience, we don't have blah 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 blah. We could keep going, but at the core of books, I just think about stories. Back to what you were saying earlier, it's that storytelling aspect.
Right?
So it's so
And having
beautiful.
someone like whether the goal is to be on Oprah, which is like, wildly exciting and, also like reaching people that would never find you. I mean, that's what so
Yeah,
another client she's like, "Sarah, I don't think I want to do a book." She's at nutrition, functional medicine. She's like, I don't like writing. It's not, but she kept like sort of being like, oh, I had this kind of nudge, that inner, the big magic, right? It taps us
yeah,
for creative projects. So hers launched in October and she's had people like, she had someone this week who called, set up a discovery call and stepped into her like high ticket program. And she said, I know you told me this would happen, but I'm still like, I can't freaking believe this woman. She's like, how did you find me on social? She's like, no, I was on Amazon and I saw your book and I read it and I just know I want to work with you. And she's like, what? Like that can,
yeah,
because she's, I know you say it, but you're a book girl, so she's like, I'm not that much of a, but that's why we do
yeah.
the audio. And what's funny too is book sales are exploding right now on audiobook sales
That's
because,
exactly what I was going to ask you
okay,
about. Yeah,
yeah, should we
it's
talk
going
like
to audio.
trends
Go
for
there. Yeah,
2025? Yeah.
yeah.
So there is a lot of data that says in times of economic contraction, political, you know, we'll call them lots of feelings, political
Yes.
angst, and big world events like wars and things that book sales really, really jump. And a reason is twofold. One is that people are being more mindful about finances, and so they feel like I'm going to read this book and really see if this person has an idea, methodology, like and then I'll know if I want like what happened, with this client. This woman's vetting. She's not just like getting on a discovery call. She wanted to like really see what these experts are about and is it a good fit, which is actually awesome for your sales cycle. Because if someone calls up and
Mhm.
just said, "Oh, I'm ready to work with you," like they've already read your book, they know your
Yeah.
methodology, so there's like, I just want to do this work now. So that's great. The other reason is because there is this trust recession, like I said, and people have gotten really burned over the last couple years because they signed up for courses and very just like impulse buys, and they didn't again take a deeper look at like who. So the what people are predicting for 25 based on the end of 24 is that people are going to be investing in experts, coaches, mentors who they have a relationship feeling with versus a transactional. So it's less like what
Mm.
result are you
Yeah.
getting me? Of course, that's still important. What product do you have? It's now like, who is it? And Simon Sinek wrote, there's a very famous TED talk where he talked about people don't buy what you sell, but why you sell it. Some of you might have heard that. And I think in 2025, what's going to happen is they're not going to buy what you sell. They're going to buy who created it.
Yeah.
And a book is a way for someone to be like, you're not now just on a call or giving me a big slick sales page. I'm going to really see what you're about because you're going to hear your story and I'm going to have to, like really, really get a sense. So it's a really interesting time. My like people and book agents are like, I know it's not good to say it's great that there's all these challenges in the world right now, but like it's great
Yeah.
for books, So anyone
Yeah.
is, if you're thinking about doing one in 25, it is a really good year. Someone like you could like republish or do, if you haven't done an audiobook of one of your printed books. I mean, people binge audiobooks. I do. I
Yeah.
listen to them on like 2 point speed. If it's like a business book or so, I just want to like get it in. I mean, people are, I've made so much more even on audiobook sales and royalties sometimes than the printed books of some of the books because people, we all know we can drive, work
Yeah.
out, walk around, do the dishes while listening to something inspiring.
Oh, this is so like this is such a great time for me personally to hear this message, but also it's like, Sarah, I told myself I wasn't going to do a big project this year. And I told you we had another interview earlier and we were talking about a book. And I was like, oh, like I feel like this is the universe tapping me like, Crystal, you have a book inside of you. And I'm like, oh my gosh, no, no, no. I said I wasn't going to do it. But then also it's so inspiring, like just listening to you and like have all these great examples of why it is important. And I do believe that it is extremely important to have all of what you are already have in your brain, right? The things, the messages that you're sharing, the passion that you have for the project you're working on or the community that you're helping, and being able to share that. Our other guest that we had, he talked about legacy. And
Yes.
it's such a beautiful thing for you to have because a lot of stuff I don't do is physical. Like you can't hold my podcast. I mean, you can hold the device that has it. You can't hold my YouTube channel, but you can hold a physical book. And man, in this virtual world that we live in, it is so dang special to have that in your hand, to show your kids, show your family, show your mom. I love showing my mom, like handing this very first book copy that I ever wrote and hand like, look, it's like, Mom, like my name it's printed. It's on this book and it looks so pretty. Like, cry with me, please. So
It's making me
I,
cry because it's like, that is
yeah.
such a huge moment. There's a neuroscience technique called an anchor image. And
Yeah.
it's actually in the book I have coming out in the spring. It's called The Millionaire Codes. So great for Proffitt. It's like, what are those things to do that subconscious reprogramming, that I was talking about, just as we just did a whole book on that with a colleague who's a neuroscientist. And you pick an image, like what's the moment for you, not like just like your book's not a bestseller. That could be it for someone, but like maybe for you, the moment is like you being with your mom and feeling how proud she is and like having those tears of just fulfillment and your legacy. And we can pick an anchor image. So if you're listening and you're sort of like, even if it's a far off vision or it's a this year vision, like you pick an anchor image of like, what's that moment when it's going to like really hit you
Yeah.
that you did this thing. And what is cool is if you start just playing it like a little movie every day, you play that anchor image, little movie, you start, suddenly your subconscious is going to start like, feeding you the ideas, the inspiration, the right people who know how to help you get it where you want to get it. And that's so beautiful. Like you said, it lives beyond us. Like my
Yeah.
YouTube channel is not going to live beyond me, like
Yeah.
I love it. Freaking love YouTube, but it's like the books feel, like the tangibleness. And on a real practical level, Crystal, since we're about Proffitt and podcasts, there is a technique I've been testing with some of our clients because I got inspired by a woman I met. And in 2025, if you all have a book or you're going to do one, there is going to be a huge opportunity to go back to really old school direct mail, like mailing your book out to potential clients, those of you that, coach or, do other things. If you have a law practice, like mailing that book or having strategic partners. Like we have a client writing a book for people whose partners are going through cancer treatment. And so she's going to have that in the therapist's office, in the doctor's offices, in the hospitals. And it's like, that is so rare now because everything's virtual.
Yeah.
And it's like the preciousness and uniqueness of like, and I have these fun gold bubble mailers, we like mail the clients. This woman generated 7 figures in 1 year off just mailing the books to potential. I mean, $1 million a year off her book with a heartfelt note to people like who might need her services. Right. And so I know it sounds so unsexy and old school, but like your point of there's a specialness.
There is. Yes. Like, and I mean, it's just like holding it in your hand and having it be there. And I know that there's people that are listening and they're like, y'all, this sounds great. Like everything you're saying, it sounds fantastic, but I'm barely like trying to keep my podcast going, or I'm on this content hamster wheel and I'm trying to fulfill the commitments that I've already made. And now y'all are trying to motivate me into doing a book too. Like, what are you doing to me? So I want you to talk to those people that maybe we're not talking to beginners, right? If you're a beginner listening to this, like come back and revisit this when you have a little bit of a back catalog. But for those of them that are listening and they've been doing a podcast, maybe they've been podcasting for a year, 24 months, and they're like, well, where do I start? Because I already have this content. Like they're not starting with like that blank cursor that's blinking at them saying you don't have any ideas. Like, they have ideas. So let's walk through what that could look like for them.
Yeah. Well, I'm so excited to be just with you all in this audience because I have this cool framework for a book that could be really fast to put together. So those of you like, I don't have any bandwidth that like you said, oh, don't give me another big project this year.
Yes.
I couldn't believe I was like, am I really doing another one? I was like, yes, and it's coming. The big magic has tapped. So those of you that it's tapping us, here's what we do. So I wanted something I teach in our book boot camps, right? Is a 3-part framework. I just want to review here because you all could use this for any kind of content that I want to give this to you. So you could use it for anything you want to create, a video, a podcast episode, even, a book. And then I'm going to share the secret one I never teach because it's just for people that have a podcast. So that's this group. All right. So it's called SSS. So hopefully you'll remember Sarah teaching you SSS. There's 3 S's, and this is super fast. The first S is your story. So this is where you're going to get someone out of their head, which is where we have skeptic, trust recession, fear, stuff, into their heart. And you just get to share like the origin story, really, like a superhero. Batman's parents were killed, behind the movie theater. He grows up to protect people from crime. Like, there's a reason we all do what we do. There is no accident. If we're on purpose, if we're doing what we really feel called to do, there's a reason. It might not have been a trauma like Batman. It could have been a revelation, an inspiration, it could be anything, but there's a reason. And so sharing like that, even if it's a short video, this would be very quick. If it's a book, you could take a nice long chapter and you really share the origin of why you've come to care so much about this topic that you're going to be teaching on and sharing about, and the cool stuff you've done about it. People want to know like that you've got some expertise, whether a lived experience or some of you are experts. You've worked in this field, you've whatever. So that's your story, because we want to get into the heart, and someone wants to identify with you and say like, oh, okay, like Crystal's been here and she knows some things that's gonna, she's a high schooler to my middle schooler or whatever it is, and then in the second S, we zoom out and we show the situation, is what I call it, like the situation of what's happening in the world. So, maybe there's a book called Proffitt First by Mike Michalowicz, who basically was, he told his story of starting these businesses, making all this money on paper, keeping nothing. His marriage is in crisis. He's never seen his kids. His health is suffering. And so he tells this like story, right? And then that, he's obviously figured out, a different plan, but then he zooms out and he shares, hey, by the way, I'm not some like loser that just couldn't get it together. Like a high percentage, like the majority of entrepreneurs have the same problem. They make money, they keep none. They have to reinvest in team and systems and tech and your podcast and, the book and all the things. So that's the zoom out to say, hey, look, this is a thing for a lot of people. You're not alone. And so you help someone feel like I'm not alone. And also you show them the stakes of, if I don't do something, so he's basically, if you don't change the way you do money, you're never it's not going to just fix itself, and this can apply to anything that we all offer. Crystal, I'm sure you podcast things. It's like, look, you've got to do some things to get this up and running. Right. And then in the rest of your piece of content, your video, your talk, your podcast episode, or the book is the third S, which is the solution. And that could be a bunch of chapters. It could be a 5-minute rest of your video. It could be, the rest of your podcast episode. And you could do mini versions. Like in a book, it might be like a big picture of what you do in the world. But like, I'm sure we all have cool solutions to all kinds of, little micro solutions. And this framework, it just makes content creation so joyful. Like if I get asked to do a talk today at 6, I will do an SSS, because you'll always know you'll give value. You'll connect through a story. You'll show people the situation and the stakes of like what's going on. And then you give them a nugget, a win.
Yeah.
And so this is why it took me. So I didn't make this up out of nowhere. I reverse engineered 100 New York Times bestsellers. 100, because I couldn't write. So this is what I did. I was in my stuff. Like, I can't write. I'm not good enough. So I productively procrastinated, is what I call it. And I said, well, what are all these books that I love? What did these books do? And every single one of them did some version in some order of SSS. And so I made up that framework, and it used to take me 3 years to write a book. It was and I was so envious. I saw people putting out a book a year, and I thought like, how are they doing it? And now I write a book in 6 to 12 weeks. If it's heavy research, like the one I'm starting now is going to be a more heavily researched book. So it will take me a good bit of this year, but all the ones I've written recently, I've been able to do with a child, running 2 businesses, in a 23-year marriage, with parents and a dog and like clients. And, there's no time. There's no time ever to write a book. It's ridiculous. None of us have time. But because of having a framework, it just was like, oh, now here's the secret. I promised a podcast version. You want an even easier one. You still use SSS. Think of like the theme that you're obsessed with in your podcast. Share a story. What are the situations? And then you could take your best episodes around that theme, where you gave solutions. If they're not already transcribed, there's lots of free AI software and everything. You transcribe them and polish them up. And those are your solution chapters. So we've had people write a book in, a couple weeks because they had a great podcast. And there was, you want to pick a through line. You could do a best of, you could certainly do that, but it's kind of cool to, pick, like, you probably have a podcast on lots of different even it's in your niche, but there's a lot of different things. So what's kind of the journey, or transformation you want to take someone on? And that's where you get like a real win for having put in all the time you've put in on your podcast. You turn that sucker into a book.
Sara, I am both so like my mind's blown first, and I'm mad at you, and
Yeah.
also like, dang it, I have to do this. Like because you just reminded me. You're like, oh, I have so much good content. Like I have like
You do.
and of course, the argument that I can make, and everyone that's listening is like, yeah, but time. It's like, no, 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 no. If you have been doing this, like, we live in a time when we've never had more accessible tools at our fingertips than we do today. And it's kind of like all your excuses are gone. Like, they are gone.
It is, and I love, Crystal, you're bringing it, because the time, it's such a torturous like feeling of I'm excited, but how, you look at and again, I have coached women that are single moms with 3 kids. It's like, and
Yeah.
it's like, we're gonna get this book done. Now,
Yeah.
another little hack just for you and anybody, because again, we have all these great tools now. I wrote my last book. I did the whole first draft of the book was while I was working out or driving to pick up my son from school. And I would
Mm.
plant my phone with the dictation app open, and I would dictate the first. Now, that's not the final book, obviously.
Right.
Tweaking
Yes.
it, I got,
Yes.
but not starting with a blank. It took months of time off that. Months. I don't use AI to write the content. I write my own content because I want
Yeah.
to do my stories, my voice. I love AI for research, and also AI can transcribe, and it can do
Yes.
those situation points. People used to have to go hire research assistants. No, it's free, and it'll be done in 2 minutes on ChatGPT.
Yes.
Perplexity. It's like, tell me the stats on, fill in your topic. I like the prompt. Give me the astonishing statistics and most inspiring facts on. And you pick
Oh, I
the
love
problem you
it.
solve or the thing you're teaching. And I mean, it's nuts. Like in seconds, you have everything you need for that part of your done, footnoted, credited, scores. Like, it's just crazy. So you really, I mean, if there was ever a year when it was more doable than ever, it's now.
Oh my gosh, Sara, like I said, I'm loving you and hating you all at the same time, because you're taking away all of my excuses, and I'm like, okay, like, this might be the year. I hadn't planned on it, but I mean, because it's so doable in a way, because at the core of, and this is just my own personal journey at this moment, is like, the message that I have is so special, and I know that there's someone that needs it. And I don't know. Let's talk about audiences for a
Yeah.
second, because I think that that's a piece that we can really kind of round out everything that we've already talked about here today, and really ground the message in thinking about your audience first. Or when does the audience come into play? Because I know that as creators, so much of us are selfish. We're like, well, I want to talk about this, or I want to do this. Do you do a bunch of research in the topic you're going to do? Do you create the book for the audience, or do you just create and then find the audience? What does that look like?
I love this question. So the very first thing I do if I'm coaching anyone or we're doing one of our boot camps is we do an exercise around what are your ideal book outcomes. And this is going to answer your
Mm.
question. I'm just going to speak to it for like 30 seconds, because this is what's crucial. So many people, and I was one of them, get to the end of writing a book and you realize you wrote the wrong book. And when I say the wrong book, there's no wrongs, but I didn't write the book for what I was hoping it would do. And then there's this awful disappointment at either it didn't get read by a lot of people or it didn't, generate clients. So what we sort of look at, what are the things you would love? So the way everyone listening can say, if I was going to magic wand, I was going to do a book and I'm going to wave the magic wand, what happens? And then if your answer is, for example, oh, I would just love to know I've educated and inspired people around my topic, then that's going to give you information about how big a role audience plays in this. If it's like, I just want to tell my story, I've just had this inside me for 20 years, I just needed to, and then you're not going to think as much about audience because you just need to get something out of you, right? If you, like a lot of our people that we work with, our members in Thought Leader Academy, they want to absolutely educate and inspire. They want to share what's inside them, and they really, really want to reach exponentially more people than they've been able to reach through social media algorithms and their, world of people who know them, right? and they want it to be revenue generating and they want it to be
Yeah.
client attracting. And so that is where I just pray anyone listening, if you're going to do a book and you care about those things, make sure you work with someone who's going to give you the strategies to put in the book, because I did books that didn't do any of those things. And I've had so many people come and say like, it didn't, da, da, da. And it's because we really
Yeah.
do get to reverse engineer. So it's first it's outcomes. And then again, thanks to AI, researching your ideal person has never been easier.
Yes.
And I've got all kinds of cool little prompts and tricks for that. But I do think audience is crucial if what your big outcome goal is attracting people to work further with. It's crucially important that that book becomes a love letter to that person, that it gives them a transformation, that it lets them know what you do, right? Like if you write a whole book and no one even knows if you coach, and your whole goal is like wanting to attract people to your coaching, like not in a gross, I've read those books, those
Yeah.
infomercially, I won't name names because it's like, I'm never going to throw a writer under the bus, but we know those books, but through story, through authenticity, through true value. And so there's absolutely easy strategies to get the outcomes we want. It's just, I didn't know them. And then, so just make sure that you find those out. And like I said, audience research is so fun because you just go on AI and say, that I serve men who stay at home with their kids and homeschool, whatever, and what are their psychographics and demographics and, where are they hanging out? What podcasts are they mostly watching? I mean, it will generate everything for you. Done.
That's incredible. Yeah, that's incredible. And I think that audience is so important. And it's the piece that I'm glad that you laid it out. It's like, it depends on the path that you want to take, because at the end of the day, I think that for a while there was a big message out there of like, well, you just got to write a book and it needs to either be for yourself or for your audience. But it wasn't like this, like, no, what is your actual goal? Like, what's your intention behind it? Because when you know that and you think about it when you're writing or when you're doing your podcast or when you're doing whatever it is that you're doing in your content creation journey, like it makes it so much bigger than yourself, right? It makes it bigger than what you want to accomplish. And for me personally, that goal is what helps me keep showing up on those days when I really don't want to write or really don't want to look at the next edits, or I don't want to do, the next thing that I need to do.
Yes. Oh my God. It's like we need that vision of that person we're going to, support, and those whys,
Yes.
those outcomes, and then making it fun. If anyone like is sort of, don't write alone. We think of writing as this cabin in the woods, monastic kind of experience,
Yes.
which of course it is just us, but we have writing parties, write-ins, writing retreat, like find some community and make it fun for you so that you feel motivated and inspired because you're kind of running with a pack. And also just making it more fun. Like I would have so much more fun getting on Zoom, even though we're just going to be quiet, push mute and write, but like to be able to say hi to people and, do a little toast with our water bottles and, and then at the end saying, dang, like I'm going to give myself a pat on the back. Like I wrote for an hour. Like that's awesome.
Yes. Yes. Oh my gosh. Community and accountability. I feel like those are going to be the words of 2025 because it's what I'm leaning into so much. So I totally agree. Finding that accountability and, leaning into someone like Sara, like your expertise and learning from you, going to your YouTube channel. And actually we were talking earlier about, you have a boot camp that actually just happened when this episode goes live, but you have another one coming up, but you have something that people can take action on today. So can you tell us a little bit about it's your 7 steps to write a revenue generating book? Like, let's hear about that.
Yes. So just like I said, you want to write the book that's aligned with your outcomes. So this guide is like my one I give all our, members in Thought Leader Academy. It's 7 steps to writing a revenue generating best-selling book. Right now, 100% of our authors, and I'm committed to this, not only finish their books, they publish and they hit the bestseller list if they do, each step in our process. And I am so committed to that because you want that credential too, right? It's like just, we're here with best-selling author Crystal Brown. It's like you want to have that, right? And so this guide is going to help you all like use what we talked about today. If you feel kind of excited, inspired, like I might think about this, it'll give you the prompts. Like, what are the book outcomes? Like, what is that SSS again? So you don't have to like remember it and haven't taken notes, all there for you, almost like in a workbook form. And so, yes, that's there for everyone. And any of you that use that, we will also gift you a ticket to our next boot camp. Like as our, that's a 2025 gift for all of you, completely free. And you could come, get more support if this is something that's exciting.
Okay, awesome. I mean, and that's so generous. Thank you so much, Sarah, because I know, like, I have spoken to many of you. I'm not going to call you out by names, but I know many of you have said, I want to write a book. And so if this is like the universe, the big magic tapping on you saying, hey, here's your sign that this is doable and this is achievable for you, go check this out. Go get Sarah's freebie and then join one of her boot camps because I think it could be so much fun. But Sarah, we're going to switch gears for a second. And I warned her. I was like, okay, I'm going to warn you because I don't always warn my guests, but we have some rapid fire questions that are always super fun. So are you up for those?
I'm excited because I don't know what they are, and this is going to make me like be on my toes, which I love. So let's do it.
Okay, so we just have 3 of them and they're super easy. And the first one is, what piece of advice would you give to a brand new podcaster or someone that's a content creator?
Yes. So trust that what you have to share is unique and needed right now. Truly, like speaking into every time you go, turn that microphone on and hit that record button, that you are really pouring into that person that needs, whether it's like you 10 years ago or, you have someone in mind, and really trust. We talked about today, you could change someone's life on that episode.
I love it. I love it. This is so good. Okay, the next one is, what is the dream podcast? So it's a 2-part question. The dream podcast you would love to be on, and who is a dream podcast guest you would love to interview?
Oh my gosh, okay, so I'm just gonna go and say I'd love to be on Mel Robbins because I'm just like loving her new stuff and just so happy for her with what's happening with Oprah and all of that. So I would say that would be the one I would like to be on. And then to have on, well, then I'm just going to let it be Mel both ways. Then she can come on mine. I'm just like,
Perfect.
I mean, just because I could give you like an 800 person list, but yeah, I think that especially because I admire when someone shares the journey and not just the summit. And I feel like, a lot of times we get to see someone's like, I was living on the street and now I have an island and I'm a billionaire. And it's like, it's cool. And we're so happy for them. But like, she shows the in between and the steps and the stuff and the inner and the outer. So I'll just to keep succinct, I will say we'll go 2 ways.
I love that. I love that. Mel is incredible too. So I love that. Okay, the last one is, do you consider yourself a perfectionist?
Yes. And I don't even try to pretend, like if my husband was here, we've been married like 24 years, and I just, and whether it's, we call it type A or perfectionism or anything. I will say though, I am a seasoned, like surrendered perfectionist. And what I mean by that is I can see the tendency, and what I love about it, the gift of perfectionism tendencies, is that you really care and you want to make something world class in the details, where of course it's a detriment is when we beat ourselves up and always feel like a failure and we never measure up and whatever. So I do a thing called a win streak, because the research shows great leaders, build on wins. Dan Sullivan's work, right? And you just every day you just say, like, what are the 3 wins? Like things I'm really proud of myself. So I think there's ways to combat the hard edges of perfectionism while still keeping the big vision, which I'm just like, I'm gonna just keep going for it.
I love that. I love that you said a surrendered perfectionist. I've never heard that before. We've had so many, like, I'm a recovering perfectionist,
Right.
or I'm this. I love the surrenderedness of it though, because it's so beautiful and it makes it like that much more profound. So all of this was so incredible, Sarah. I know that you're going to continue to do amazing things. Do you know the title of your book that you have coming out this year?
Yes. So this 2025 spring is called the Millionaire Codes. And as soon as that's ready, I will send over.
You'll have to tell us.
Links. I will.
Yes.
It's such a fun one because it's really got these sequences that have been really only known by super clinical nerdy neuroscientists. And I thought, like,
I love it.
I trained in it, and I was like, I want everybody to have access to these. So we'll have a lot of free demos so you don't have to like read them and do them. It's going to be really fun.
Oh my gosh, Sarah, this, you have so many fun things, and like 2025 just started and I feel like you have all of these fun things happening. So if people are listening and watching, where can they come hang out with you, learn more about you? What should they do now?
Yes. Come over. I'm really into YouTube. I just love it. It's where I like to go listen to podcasts like yours and take in content and do things. So our YouTube channel, it's at Sara Connell author, and I'm SaraConnell. I know there's no H on the Sarah. So come hang out on YouTube. If you DM me or send a comment there, then we always have all the, fun updates and previews and free stuff going on. So we'll hook everybody up.
Okay, awesome. Y'all go check out what Sara is doing. Thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your wisdom. And I mean, this is, to be honest, just having a really fun conversation, like nerding out about book. Like this was so much fun today. So thank you for coming on the show.
I've loved every minute. Thanks.